Let us begin, not with thunder, not with war, but with the slow breath of myth. With stories not of heroes charging into battle, but of gods, strange, complicated, deeply human gods, lounging among the clouds or brooding beneath the earth. In ancient Greece, mythology wasn't just entertainment. It was explanation. It was memory. It was warning. It was the invisible frame behind the visible world. Every whisper of wind, every crash of waves, every glimmer of starlight. They all had meaning because a god had moved, or smiled, or wept. And the gods? Oh, the Olympians. What a family they were. Not saints, not saviors, but power in all its messy, radiant, terrifying glory. They argued, they seduced, they punished, they fell in love, and they held grudges for centuries. Each god was more than just a name. They were forces, archetypes, reflections of the humans who told their stories around firelight or in marble temples. Zeus, king of the gods, ruled from Olympus with a thunderbolt always in hand and a wandering eye that launched 1,000 mortal bloodlines. His voice shook mountains, but his jealousy was the thing most feared. Poseidon, brother to Zeus, ruled the sea with a trident sharp as a storm. He was moody, wild, unpredictable, just like the oceans he commanded. When he raged, entire cities trembled. Hades, the third brother, received the underworld as his domain, not a punishment, but a necessity. For in Greek thought, even death required order, and Hades ensured it. But it wasn't only the brothers who shaped the world. Athena, born fully armored from Zeus's forehead, governed wisdom and strategy. Artemis, twin of Apollo, guarded the wilds and the moon, fierce and untouched. Apollo himself was light and prophecy, poetry and plague. Aphrodite, who rose from the sea foam, wielded beauty like a blade, and left chaos wherever she walked. Ares reveled in war, while Hephaestus, limping and quiet, forged wonders in his subterranean forge. They each held dominion over some aspect of existence, love, war, knowledge, nature, but none ruled alone. The gods existed in a kind of divine drama, equal parts soap opera and cosmic force. And the Greeks, well, they told these tales not only to honor their gods, but to understand themselves. For every storm that broke a ship upon the rocks, there was Poseidon's anger. For every unexpected victory in battle, Athena's favor. For every desire, every grief, every folly, there was a god to blame or thank. These myths weren't static either. They shifted, grew, adapted as the centuries passed. Sometimes Zeus was wise, sometimes he was cruel. Sometimes Hera was a regal queen. Other times, a jealous force of vengeance. The myths evolved with the people who carried them, braided into politics, morality, ritual, and dream. In this ever-changing mythscape, gods who once were honored might fade to whispers, while others gained new relevance. But not all myths are equal. Some are told loudly, passed down in triumphant odes and grand epics. Others whisper in the corners, the quieter stories, the stranger ones. And tonight, those are the myths we'll explore. We'll drift among the Olympians not in their glory, but in their complexity, their contradictions, their secrets. The versions of them that don't often make the school books, but linger in the margins of old texts, in half-forgotten cults, in statues eroded by time. So settle into the hush of twilight. Let the world dim. Let your breath soften. We're stepping into stories older than empires, into a world where gods fall in love, fall into rage, fall from grace, into a world where divine power doesn't always look like justice, and immortality doesn't always mean peace. This is where the gods begin, not as symbols on a textbook page, but as voices in the dark. In the quiet folds of myth, some gods shimmer less brightly than others, not because they lacked power, but because their power was more subtle. Take Hermes and Dionysus, for example. Not thunder wielders or ocean shakers, but gods of transition, boundary, madness, and joy. The Greeks saw in them not just mischief, but a strange kind of wisdom. The wisdom of doorways, of in-betweens. Hermes, the messenger god, is everywhere and nowhere. He wears winged sandals, not just for speed, but because he slips between realms, Olympus, Earth, the underworld. He guides the dead, guards travelers, and stirs luck into the air like salt into soup. He is the god of commerce and thieves, of invention and lies told well. If you're lost on the road or trying to talk your way out of trouble, Hermes hears you. He doesn't stand still. He doesn't judge. He moves. Dionysus is another story entirely. Where Hermes dances at the edges, Dionysus crashes through the center. He is wine and frenzy, theater and transformation. His rites were wild, ecstatic, and at times terrifying. He blurred the line between man and God, reason and passion. In him, the Greeks saw not only celebration, but surrender. A surrender to forces beyond control. He was born twice, they said. First from Semele, a mortal who dared to see Zeus in his full godhood and was burned to ash. Zeus saved the unborn child and stitched him into his own thigh until he could be born again. This strangeness, this second birth, marked Dionysus forever as a god of thresholds and mysteries. Together, Hermes and Dionysus form an odd pair, the guide and the liberator, the whisper and the cry. One moves silently in moonlight, the other roars by torchlight through the trees. They are not often paired in stories, but their kinship is deep. They are both liminal gods, existing on the borders between worlds. And in a culture like ancient Greece, where identity, order, and place were everything, those who crossed boundaries were both fascinating and dangerous. It's why festivals of Dionysus were filled with masks, role reversals, and ecstatic release. For one night, slaves and masters, men and women, old and young, all became something else. It was dangerous, yes, but also necessary. A release valve for a society that prized structure. A celebration of chaos, because sometimes chaos tells truths order cannot bear. And Hermes, god of boundaries, granted safe passage through these liminal spaces. He stood at crossroads where every decision forks into the unknown. He was the wind at your back, the clever idea in your panic, the laughter in a close escape. To pray to Hermes wasn't just to ask for safety. It was to acknowledge risk, to admit that travel, change, and movement are essential to being human. Their myths are rarely simple. Take Dionysus, who brought madness not only to those who denied him, but sometimes to his own followers. He punished disbelief, yes, but he also revealed inner truths through ecstasy. People who followed Dionysus didn't just dance, they transformed. They shed layers, became more than themselves, or perhaps simply themselves, fully unmasked. Hermes, too, has his tricks. He stole Apollo's cattle as an infant, then invented the lyre to charm his way out of punishment. He lies, but with grace. He cheats, but with elegance. He is the archetype of the clever one, not wicked, but agile. He reminds us that wit is a form of survival, that cleverness, when not used cruelly, is a kind of magic. In later traditions, Hermes becomes even more, merging with the Egyptian Thoth to become Hermes Trismegistus, a mythical sage of alchemy and esoteric wisdom. He becomes the keeper of hidden knowledge, the master of transformation, the silent scribe of the stars. Dionysus, too, evolves. He becomes a symbol of resurrection, of the soul's rebirth after suffering. In Orphic traditions, his dismemberment and reassembly echo the cycles of nature: death, decay, rebirth. He becomes more than a god of wine. He becomes a symbol of eternal return. Their stories remind us that change is sacred, that the spaces between are just as holy as the places we rest, that the road, the moment before the mask is lifted, the second before the dawn, that is where divinity lives. So now, as you lie between wakefulness and sleep, let Hermes guide your thoughts gently down the darkening road. Let Dionysus lull you not into madness, but into dream. Let the shifting wind and flickering torchlight carry you just far enough from the known. The gods of movement are near, and they do not ask for worship, only that you walk, breathe, and trust the change. In the quiet space between night and dawn, when the sky still lingers in silver blue shadow, two figures step forward from the folds of myth, siblings shaped by the same divine hand, yet bound for different paths. Apollo and Artemis, sunlight and moonlight, day and night. They were twins, but never mirror images, more like two halves of a greater pattern, each defined by contrast and harmony. Born on the floating island of Delos, a land unanchored until destiny made it firm, they entered the world under strained and secretive circumstances. Their mother, Leto, was pursued by Hera's wrath, Zeus's jealous wife having banned any place under the sun from offering her sanctuary. But Delos, unclaimed by land or sea, bent no rules. There, Artemis was born first, calm and sure, and soon after, she helped deliver her brother, making her goddess of childbirth before she even grew into her own power. Apollo followed, golden-haired and radiant. From his first breath, he shimmered with promise. He would become the god of music, prophecy, healing, reason, and art. Artemis, by contrast, claimed the wilderness, the wild, the untamed, the nocturnal. She walked with deer and wolves, guarded the edges of things, and kept herself untouched by the ambitions of civilization or the distractions of love. They were close, always, but never interchangeable. Apollo bathed in sunlight, stood on polished marble, and strummed his lyre to lull cities into peace. His temples were places of clarity and firelight, of geometry and guidance. He spoke through oracles, their riddles more revealing than any simple truth. He brought order where there was noise, music where there was chaos. Artemis moved silently under the trees. She was the rustle of a doe in the underbrush, the gleam of moonlight on river water, the flicker of something just beyond the campfire's reach. She was the protector of girls, the punisher of the impure, the edge of the knife where shadow meets skin. To know Artemis was to know independence so complete that it could be mistaken for coldness. Together, they spanned the human condition, light and dark, structure and instinct, reason and mystery. Where Apollo demanded understanding, Artemis required respect. Where he ruled through order, she ruled through distance. And yet, both carried the aura of inevitability. The sun must rise, the moon must follow. Apollo's most renowned sanctuary was Delphi, where his priestess, the Pythia, would breathe sacred vapors and offer visions to pilgrims. Her answers were rarely simple, more often warnings shaped like poetry. And that was Apollo's way. To offer light, but not always direction. To inspire, but not instruct. His music, too, was transformative. It was said that his lyre could heal the soul and still the heart. That in its harmonies lay the design of the cosmos. The stars given melody, the heartbeat of the world tuned to a divine rhythm. Yet, for all his brilliance, Apollo's stories were tinged with tragedy. He loved mortals who fled him. He sought perfection, and in doing so, often broke what he wished to preserve. Artemis was no less fierce. She protected those who honored her, but vengeance came swift to those who violated her sanctity. Actaeon, who stumbled upon her bathing, was turned into a stag and torn apart by his own hounds. Niobe, who dared to mock Leto, saw her children slain by Artemis and Apollo in merciless retribution. Artemis did not forgive lightly, nor forget quickly. But she was not cruel without reason. Her world was one of sacred balance. The forest had laws, and to violate them was to invite retribution. She was the stillness in the wild, the hush before a hunt, the cold clarity of a night under stars. She walked alone because she chose to, not because she lacked affection, but because freedom was her shrine. Their twinship was not one of sameness, but of resonance. He was the archer who struck from afar with light. She, the hunter, who moved silently in shadow. Apollo sang to crowds, to kings, to prophets. Artemis whispered to animals, to trees, to the wind. Both ruled, but neither with dominion over the other. And so, as you drift toward sleep, imagine them now. Not gods carved in marble, but two silhouettes moving across the edge of myth. Apollo, casting warmth over distant hills, his voice a song older than memory. Artemis slipping through silver mist, her gaze cool, watchful, untamed. They are balance. They are boundary. They are the twin guardians of night and day, of logic and wildness, reminding us that life is held not in certainty, but in the dance between. Let them lead you now, not to clarity or confusion, but to quiet. Beneath the world we know, deeper than oceans, below even the memory of light, there lies a realm where silence is sovereign. The Greeks called it the underworld. Not a hell, not a punishment, but a destination, a certainty. And at the center of that quiet kingdom sits Hades. Hades, the eldest son of Kronos and Rhea, did not claim the skies like Zeus or the seas like Poseidon. When the world was divided after the fall of the Titans, he accepted what was left, everything beneath. Some say he drew the short straw, others believe he chose the stillness. Either way, he did not complain. Hades ruled not with noise, but with presence. His was a power that didn't need to shout. He is often misunderstood. Not evil, not cruel, but firm. In Greek belief, he did not cause death. He received it. He did not hunt mortals or smite them from the heavens. He waited, because eventually, everything comes to him. His realm was vast, layered like the roots of a great tree. Rivers marked its boundaries, each one symbolic, not just of geography, but emotion. There was the Styx, the river of unbreakable oaths, the Acheron, river of sorrow, Lethe, river of forgetting, Phlegethon, river of fire, and Cocytus, river of lamentation. Souls crossed these waters with Hermes as their guide, a coin placed under the tongue of the dead to pay the ferryman, Charon. No payment, no passage. Those who crossed were judged, not by Hades himself, but by three ancient kings, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus, who weighed a soul's deeds without favor or fear. The wicked descended to Tartarus, a pit deep and dark, where punishments echoed the crime. The virtuous found their way to the Elysian fields, where sunlight never faded and music never ceased. Most, however, went to the Asphodel meadows, an endless plain of soft stillness, where memories dulled and dreams faded, neither suffering nor joy, just continuation. And there, amidst that expanse, Hades ruled with quiet certainty. He did not rage. He did not seduce or scheme. His presence was felt in funeral rites, in the hush that follows the last breath, in the whisper of incense smoke curling toward the ceiling. His name was spoken rarely, and only in hushed tones, for to invoke Hades was to invite his gaze, and that was not something done lightly. Yet not all feared him. In certain mystery cults, he was revered. At Eleusis, initiates learned sacred truths of death, rebirth, and the soul's journey, and Hades was not tormentor, but gatekeeper. In Orphic traditions, he was the steward of cycles, where nothing is lost, only transformed. He was not a wall, but a door. Picture him now, seated on a throne carved of volcanic stone, his robe draped in quiet folds. Around him, the shades of the dead murmur like wind in tall grass. His eyes do not blaze, they consider. He holds a scepter, not for violence, but for order. No chains bind the dead, time itself does the binding. Beside him, Persephone tends a pale garden, its blossoms white and silent, blooming in the dark. Unlike Zeus or Poseidon, Hades does not seek praise. He does not demand temples or sacrifice. His authority is absolute not because he took it, but because it was given, and because it cannot be escaped. Even gods acknowledge his role. When the world ends, they too will go to him. He appears rarely in myth, and when he does, it is never without purpose. He lent his helm of invisibility to Perseus, who used it to escape after slaying Medusa. He aided in the battle against the giants. He listened with surprising fairness to Orpheus, who begged for his wife's return. Hades agreed under one condition: do not look back. When Orpheus failed, Hades claimed what was due, not out of cruelty, but principle. He does not lie, he does not cheat, he upholds. And perhaps that is why, though feared, he is also respected. In a world of divine tantrums and celestial grudges, Hades is consistent. He waits, he keeps his word, he remembers every name. So tonight, as you close your eyes, do not fear him. He is not in your shadow. He is not calling your name. He is watching over those already gone, tending their memories like a gardener tends quiet roots. Let the earth hold you gently. Let your thoughts drift like fallen leaves. Let the hush of that timeless kingdom lull you deeper. Hades waits, but not for you. Not yet. He simply waits as he always has, and always will. She is often overlooked, even in Olympus. While thunder cracked for Zeus and waves rose for Poseidon, while Artemis roamed the forests and Apollo lit the sky, there was another presence, quieter, stiller, and just as essential. Hestia, the goddess of the hearth. She did not ride chariots or hurl weapons. She did not provoke drama or make demands. She tended the fire, always the fire. In a world of gods who chased power, who loved and warred and tricked and punished, Hestia simply remained. She was the firstborn of Kronos and Rhea, the first to be swallowed by her father and the last to be freed. When the cosmos settled and domains were given out, Hestia asked for little. She claimed not the sea or sky, but the hearth, the center of every home, every temple, every city. And in that choice lay her strength. In every Greek household, a fire burned. It was sacred, it was hers. It warmed food, gave light, offered comfort. Before meals, an offering was made to Hestia. Before sacrifices to other gods, she was honored first and last. Not because she demanded it, but because it was right. She represented what held the world together. Her temples were unusual, often round, open to the sky. The flame inside never went out. It was tended day and night by priests or virgins sworn to her service. The most famous were the Vestal virgins in Rome, her cult enduring even as empires rose and fell. They kept the fire alive, because a city without Hestia's flame was a city untethered. In myth, she rarely speaks, rarely acts, but when the gods feuded, it was she who mediated. When they debated who would join Olympus, it was Hestia who stepped down, yielding her seat to Dionysus so peace might remain. Not in defeat, but in wisdom. She had no lovers, no scandals. She chose chastity, not from fear, but from clarity. She belonged to herself, and to everyone. Artists showed her seated, veiled, often holding a small flame. Her eyes were calm, her hands still, and in that stillness there was power. For though war gods may win battles, and sea gods may stir tempests, it is the hearth that welcomes you home. It is warmth that endures when passion cools. It is stability that makes beauty possible. The Greeks knew this. They honored her in silence, in the steady rhythm of daily life. Not all gods crave spectacle. Some simply sustain. So tonight, as the day's edges blur and darkness settles gently around you, think of Hestia's fire. Not the blinding blaze of glory, but the steady flicker of constancy. The ember that does not burn but glows. She asks nothing from you. No quest, no offering, no oath. Only that you rest. Only that you return. Let the hearth be warm in your memory. Let its light soften the edges of thought. Let Hestia, in her quiet watchfulness, hold the space for your dreams. And as your breath slows, imagine a small fire in the center of a stone room. The wind outside forgotten. The world hushed. And there, beside the flame, sits the goddess no one sees, yet everyone needs. Hestia. Let us now turn our gaze to the clouds. Not the rolling storms that shout across the heavens, but the soft golden ones that drift above Olympus, where divine feet have tread and thunder has long since hushed. Here we find Hera, queen not by marriage alone, but by presence, will, and wisdom. She is not lightning, but the atmosphere it lives in. She does not roar, but she rules. To know Hera is to understand that majesty does not always arrive with charm. Hers is the dignity of someone who has seen it all, survived it all, and still remains unshaken. She is the goddess of marriage, of women, of sacred bonds and vows that do not break, even when everything else does. She was born, like her siblings, to Kronos and Rhea. And like them, she was swallowed whole by her father in his fearful quest to stop destiny. Later, when Zeus freed his siblings and divided the heavens among them, Hera emerged, not like Athena in a blaze of brilliance, but in quiet force. She became queen of the gods, not because she was chosen by Zeus, but because she demanded and deserved it. Their courtship is told in strange shapes. Zeus, ever the trickster, took the form of a small bird and sought her pity. She held him, soothed him, and then he transformed and claimed her. Not the softest romance, But in myth, things often begin with surprise and power. And Hera, to her credit, never forgot, never submitted. She was his wife, yes, but never just his. And their marriage? Let's say it had its weather. Zeus wandered, oh how he wandered, through forests, dreams, disguises, and daughters of kings. He turned into bulls and swans, into golden rain and whispers on the wind. And Hera? She watched, she knew, and she responded. She is often called jealous, but that word is too small. She was justice given shape. When wronged, she did not break. She struck, with strategy, memory, and, yes, some well-placed curses. She punished not just Zeus's lovers, but their children too, like Heracles, whom she haunted from cradle to pyre. Yet even that feud ended in reconciliation. Such is the complexity of godhood. She hated, then honored, then accepted. And that's the thread that runs through Hera. Not just rage, but endurance. Not just fury, but structure. Her realm was not thunder or wave, but institution. She upheld what others took for granted. When mortals married, they prayed to Hera. When queens rose to power, they thanked her. Her temples were radiant, filled with columns and candles, solemn prayers, and woven garlands. In Argos, her worship was the beating heart of civic life. Priestesses served her not out of fear, but respect. In art, she is shown robed and crowned, seated or standing beside Zeus, but never behind. A peacock often walks at her feet, its feathers glittering with the eyes of Argus, the hundred-eyed guardian she once set to watch a transformed rival. When that guardian fell, Hera honored him by placing his eyes forever in the bird's tail. Memory, again, made sacred. She was no passive figure. She gave aid to Jason and the Argonauts, offered sanctuary to heroes, and lent wisdom to the bold. Yet she always remained, first and foremost, queen. A queen who demanded loyalty not because she feared its absence, but because she knew its value. Her power wasn't flash, it was form, it was law, custom, the deep bones of society. Zeus might bend the rules, but Hera reminded everyone they still existed, and that they mattered. So now, as the night stretches long and your thoughts grow soft, imagine her there, seated high on Olympus, in a hall carved of marble and lit with stars. Her gaze is steady, her voice quiet but firm. Around her, other gods may bicker, may laugh, may scheme, but when Hera speaks, the room listens. She is not the goddess of forgiveness, she is the goddess of structure, of continuation, of bonds that may fray but never fully break. Tonight, let her watch over your rest. Let her calm be the ceiling above your dreams. Let the steadiness of her presence ease your heart. Remind you that not all love is gentle, but it endures. Athena was not born as mortals are. She arrived fully formed, fully armored, from the forehead of Zeus, the king of the gods. Her mother, Metis, the goddess of wisdom, had been swallowed whole by Zeus after a troubling prophecy foretold that her child would one day surpass him. Zeus, ever concerned with power, decided to contain that threat, literally, within himself. But wisdom cannot be kept caged forever. One day, plagued by an unbearable headache, Zeus summoned Hephaestus, the divine blacksmith. With a mighty swing of his axe, Hephaestus split open Zeus's skull, and from it sprang Athena. Not crying, not crawling, but shouting a battle cry. A goddess of intellect and war, born not of blood, but of thought. From the beginning, Athena was distinct. She didn't rage, she strategized. She didn't seduce, she guided. Her realms were wisdom, crafts, reason, and the kind of warfare that required discipline, not fury. Unlike Ares, her counterpart, who gloried in blood and chaos, Athena represented clarity, calculation, purpose. It's said she never married. Not because she couldn't, but because she wouldn't. She chose a life of independence, not loneliness. Her mind was too sharp for compromise, her principles too solid for distraction. In this, she became something unique among the Olympians, respected not only for her strength, but for her restraint. Athena's most famous story of civic pride involves the city of Athens itself. Both she and Poseidon sought to be its patron. Poseidon, always grand, struck the ground with his trident and offered a salt spring or a warhorse. Accounts vary. Athena, by contrast, planted the olive tree, modest, practical, enduring. The people chose her, not because her gift was flashy, but because it would feed, shade, and sustain them. And that is Athena's legacy. Not the dramatic, but the durable. Her temple, the Parthenon, still watches over Athens. Marble columns and precise geometry echo her spirit, unbending, elegant, designed. A home not for worship alone, but for ideals, logic, justice, discipline. In war, Athena favored heroes who thought before they struck. Odysseus, cunning and resourceful, earned her favor. She did not hand him victory, but lent him clarity. In his long journey home, her guidance came as whispers of sense amid storms of chaos. But Athena could be merciless. When challenged, she responded with precision. Arachne, a mortal weaver, dared compare her skill to the goddesses. In their contest, Arachne's tapestry was flawless, yet irreverent, depicting the gods' misdeeds. Athena, though admiring the technique, tore the work apart and transformed Arachne into the first spider, doomed to weave eternally. Not because of malice, but because of pride wounded. Justice to Athena was not always kind, but it was always exact. She is often shown wearing armor, carrying a spear and shield. Upon her breast, the aegis, a gift from her father, bears the head of Medusa, another symbol not of cruelty, but of power harnessed. She had helped Perseus in his quest to slay the Gorgon, and afterward, took the monster's visage not as a trophy, but as a warning. Her sacred animal was the owl, quiet, sharp-eyed, watchful. On ancient Athenian coins, its image represented more than wealth. It meant wisdom, civic duty, and the clarity of sight in a dark world. She was a goddess for scholars, for leaders, for anyone who sought to build rather than destroy. Philosophers debated under her watch. Lawmakers invoked her name. Even in modern times, her name echoes in institutions of learning, her likeness atop libraries and universities. Athena did not crave affection, but she earned reverence. She did not demand fear, but she commanded respect. So now, as your breath evens and the world begins to fade into mist, think of her not as a distant deity, but as a presence within, quiet, steady, discerning. She does not lull, she clarifies. She watches over the mind even as the body sleeps. Let her shield guard your dreams. Let her wisdom soften your thoughts. Let her be the calm voice in the still dark, reminding you that strength can be silent, that knowledge is a kind of armor, and that in every choice, there is a path toward clarity. Athena walks beside you now, not to lead, not to follow, but to guide. Let the sounds of hammers rise gently now, not in clangs of war, but in measured rhythms echoing through the forge. Tonight, we visit two gods so different in temperament, they rarely appear side by side in myth. Yet, here they are, sharing space in our quiet thoughts. One embodies fury with a blade, the other, fire with purpose. Ares and Hephaestus, the god of war and the god of the forge. Ares, son of Zeus and Hera, was the embodiment of pure aggression. He did not wage war to defend, nor to conquer with strategy. He surged into battle like a storm with no center. He was the bloodlust before the plan, the chaos behind the charge. Unlike Athena, who stood for tactical warfare, Ares gloried in the fight itself. And the Greeks, for all their admiration of strength, were wary of him. His myths are not tales of triumph. They're warnings wrapped in glory. Even Zeus found him tiresome. In the Iliad, Zeus calls Ares the most hateful of the gods, which is a rather harsh review from one's own father. His companions in battle were Phobos, fear, Deimos, terror, and Eris, strife, an entourage of anxiety. Ares didn't walk into war. He thundered in with a scream, dragging the scent of iron and ash behind him. His presence meant ruin, not resolution. He was not clever, nor particularly successful. In one myth, two mortal sons of Poseidon trap him in a bronze jar. For months, Ares, god of war, pickled like olives. The gods eventually freed him, but one can't help but wonder if they waited a little longer than necessary. Yet Ares wasn't without charm. In his moments of stillness, rare as they were, he loved passionately. His most famous affair was with Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty, his opposite in many ways. Their union, wild and illicit, was discovered and exposed by Hephaestus, her husband, in a trap of golden chains. The gods laughed, as they often did, but beneath the laughter was something darker. Ares represented not just battle, but the passions that overwhelm judgment. Then there's Hephaestus, born, in some versions, to Hera alone, thrown from Olympus for being imperfect. He fell for an entire day and landed in the sea, where he was raised by gentle nymphs. From rejection came resilience. Hephaestus did not rise with rage. He rose with skill. He became the divine smith, master of metal and fire. From his forge came Zeus's thunderbolts, Achilles' armor, and Pandora herself. He shaped beauty, not with brush or word, but with hammer and flame. His workshop was no place of poetry, yet it created the tools of legend. Lame in one leg, often soot-covered, Hephaestus was not what the Greeks typically admired in form, but he was respected, because his was a strength of perseverance, of transformation. He turned pain into power, exile into craft. Married to Aphrodite, his story is one of contrast. She, goddess of desire. He, god of endurance. They did not find happiness in each other, yet their union reminds us that even gods must reckon with imbalance. And while Ares stormed into myth with fire and steel, Hephaestus waited in his forge, shaping destinies with hands that bore the marks of work. His art was lasting. His creations were more than objects. They were anchors of the divine. He, too, played a part in the gods' dramas. He built thrones that could bind. He crafted automatons, golden maidens who moved with grace. He was a god of invention, long before mortals knew the word. In art, Ares appears youthful, armored, poised to strike. Hephaestus is stockier, bearded, bent slightly at the knee, often holding tongs or hammer. Together they sketch the outline of masculine force in Greek thought. One explosive, one enduring, one who breaks, one who builds. So now, as you lie in the hush between thoughts, Imagine them. Ares pacing the edge of a battlefield, restless, smoldering, already seeking his next challenge. Hephaestus at his anvil, sparks rising like stars, each strike echoing a story into being. Let them remind you that force takes many forms, that not all fire is destructive, that in the balance between rage and resolve, there is creation. Sleep now, under the quiet weight of ancient metal. Let the war god rest his sword. Let the smith god cool his forge, and let their shadows fade into dream. Now the path's wine stranger. We've walked with kings and queens of Olympus, with warriors and builders, judges and visionaries. But what of the boundary crossers? The ones who don't claim thrones but thresholds? Tonight, the story turns to two gods who blur the lines. Dionysus and Hermes, chaos and cleverness, wine and wit, madness and messages. They do not always appear together in myth, but in spirit. They are companions. Where one pours the wine, the other steals the cup. Where one ignites frenzy, the other slips between shadows. Dionysus, the god of ecstasy. Hermes, the god of transition. Together, they remind us that the world is not made only of opposites. It's made of crossings. Dionysus was not born cleanly into Olympus. His beginnings are tangled, like the vines he later wore in his hair. His mother, Semele, was a mortal, beloved by Zeus. Hera, in a rare and ruthless act of trickery, convinced Semele to demand that Zeus show himself in his true divine form. No mortal can see such glory and live. Semele perished in flame, and Zeus, grieving but unwilling to lose the child, sewed the unborn Dionysus into his own thigh. From that act of divine absurdity, Dionysus was born again, twice born, twice claimed. He wandered the world, never fully accepted by Olympus, never fully mortal either. In his wake grew vines and madness, music and wildness. He was followed by maenads, frenzied women who danced barefoot under moonlight, who tore animals apart with their bare hands in ecstatic ritual. He was joy, yes, but also terror. He brought release, but sometimes from the self. Dionysus is more than the god of wine. He is the god of letting go, of forgetting boundaries, loosening the grip. In his festivals, the Greeks wore masks and costumes, traded roles, danced until names didn't matter. For a day or a week, the world bent, and in that bending was truth. He reminded them that control is an illusion, and in the collapse of it, something sacred can emerge. His symbols are the ivy crown, the thyrsus, a staff wrapped in vine and crowned with pine cone, the cup, the grape. In art, he is youthful, sensual, often draped loosely, as if shrugging off not just clothes, but identity. His gaze is distant, as though he sees something beyond the horizon of thought. And then there is Hermes. Born in a cave to Maya, one of the Pleiades, he didn't wait to grow into mischief. On the day of his birth, he stole Apollo's cattle, invented the lyre, and played innocent with such charm that even Apollo forgave him. Hermes is the god of transitions, between places, between states of being. He escorts souls to the underworld. He guides travelers. He inspires thieves and poets, merchants and liars. If a door opens where there shouldn't be one, Hermes likely made it. He carries the caduceus, a staff with twin serpents coiled in balance. On his feet and cap, wings, because he moves swiftly, always in motion. He is the messenger of the gods, but also the protector of roads, crossroads, and the uncertain in between. Together, Hermes and Dionysus hold a strange power, the divine gift of change. They remind us that transformation is sacred, that masks can reveal, and that not all paths must be straight. They are gods of paradox, of laughter that hides wisdom, of madness that liberates. In Orphic traditions, Dionysus was torn apart by titans and reborn, his soul bound to cycles of death and renewal. Hermes, too, transformed in later ages, merging with Egyptian tothe to become Hermes Trismegistus, patron of alchemy, of secret knowledge, of mystery schools that whispered truths in symbols and stars. So now, as your thoughts wander and boundaries soften, picture them. Dionysus in a clearing, lit by torchlight, music rising, dancers moving in slow spirals around him. His eyes half closed, not from sleep, but from knowing. Hermes on the road ahead, a smile playing on his lips, hand outstretched, not to lead, but to walk beside. Let them show you that even in chaos, there is companionship. Even in confusion, there is movement. Let your breath deepen, let your thoughts tangle like ivy. And know that even in dreams, these two divine tricksters are watching, not to deceive, but to delight. To walk the edges with you, to remind you that it's okay not to know where you're going, only that you go. That sometimes, the best stories begin when you step off the map. Sleep now. The road ahead can wait. We've wandered with warriors, dined with tricksters, stood beneath thunderclouds, and danced through vineyards. We've heard the bronze-sharp wisdom of Athena, the volcanic stillness of Hades, the silent fire of Hestia, the silver-tongued laughter of Hermes. And now, as the journey reaches its final stretch, we arrive at a quieter place. A place beyond story, beyond spectacle. A place of presence, of stillness. Here sit the forgotten gods. Not forgotten in name, but in the way mist forgets its shape. or how footsteps fade behind you on a forest trail. These are the half-seen deities, the grave and the hearth, the boundary and the breath. And in that space between the echoes, we find the essence of what myth is meant to do. It's not about memorizing who turned into what animal or who flung lightning at whom. It's not about tracking which god loved which mortal and what chaos followed. It's not even about who ruled, who rebelled, who conquered, who fell. It's about something gentler. The Greeks, clever as they were, understood this. They made gods in their image, not in perfection, but in reflection. Their pantheon was a mirror, cracked and beautiful, held up to the sky. Zeus is authority and impulse. Hera, honor and resentment. Poseidon, might and mood. Athena, mind and margin. Apollo, clarity and control. Artemis, wildness and watchfulness. Aphrodite, longing and allure. Ares, rage without reason. Hephaestus, pain made practical. Hermes, in between. Dionysus, beyond, and then the quiet ones. Hades, who governs endings. Hestia, who guards beginnings. Together, they mapped the human soul, its contradictions, its needs, its dreams, its fears. In these stories, we found comfort not because the gods were just, but because they were understandable. They hurt as we hurt. They longed as we long. They made mistakes. They changed their minds. They failed. They tried again. They demanded reverence and often didn't deserve it, just like us. But unlike us, they endured. And so we return to them again and again. At altars and in song, around hearths and within temples, whispered in dreams and etched in marble. Not because we believed they controlled the weather, but because we knew they captured something truer than weather: mood, moment, meaning. And even now, long after the temples have crumbled, after their names have faded from household speech, they still live. Not in heaven, not in the clouds, but here, in stories, in thoughts we have at dusk, and the hush before we sleep. So now, as the final notes of myth fade and silence returns, let it be a comforting silence, the kind that follows a well-told tale, the kind that welcomes you into stillness, not with absence, but with presence. Picture the gods not on thrones, but resting. Zeus's thunder quieted, Poseidon's trident resting on ocean stone. Athena's spear leaned carefully against a marble wall. Hermes walking the edge of a dream. Dionysus asleep beneath ivy. Hades watching, not waiting. Hestia, tending a flame that never dies. No judgment now, no chaos, just breath. Just time unwinding gently around you, like a thread laid down by the fates themselves. You are not asked to remember every tale, only to remember that you are part of one. And that, perhaps, is the real power of myth. Not that it teaches you who the gods were, but that it whispers back who you are. So sleep now. Let the myth settle like dust on stone. Let the names soften on your tongue. Let the world grow quiet. And in that quiet, know this: you are safe. You are seen. You are part of the story. Good night.